As a former CEO of this amazing charity, I'm proud to be able to stay involved in championing their work. This includes finding and supporting smaller organisations and their highly focused initiatives, which make a real difference to children and their families going through the cancer journey. One of those is the Beads of Courage program, and I'm delighted to be able to talk with their CEO, John Drummond, about what they do. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
First thing I want to ask you is, how did Beads of Courage come about? What was the inspiration? How did you get going?
Beads of Courage came about from initially a charity we started called Be Child Cancer Aware. We did that charity after our son Ted, who was 6 months old, was the youngest person to be diagnosed with cancer in our local area.
Wow.
And at the end of his treatment, he had a ribbon which said winner on one side and made in China on the other side. And that was to represent all of his treatment for about 4 or 5 years.
And just to give us a slight flavour of that, you know, you've got that one little trophy,
Yeah.
Wrong word.
Yeah.
But so like, what kind of treatments, how many times was he in and out of hospital, you know, all that sort of stuff?
Ted had approximately 14 general anaesthetics, 12 lumbar punctures. He had 2 Hickman lines, 1 Porter cath. He had about 300 nights in isolation in hospital. He had 67 blood products, so transfusions, platelets, those sorts of things. Lost his hair twice, it regrew twice. And at the end of all his treatment, he was given this little plastic medal that said win on one side and made in China on the other. And we kind of looked at it and thought, that doesn't show what he's been through. So that's why we introduced the Beads of Courage into the UK.
That's incredible, because I've actually met, there's one little girl who had been through the program with her brain tumour treatment. And I remember saying to her, how many beads have you got, Dottie? And she ran the length of the room about 6 times to represent.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, what's so amazing about the Beads of Courage. Like, every single one represents a treatment that a child's endured and conquered. Yeah.
Each one is a milestone of what they've endured and what they've had the courage to overcome. Yeah. So whether it's a blood transfusion, whether it's a day's worth of chemotherapy or radiotherapy, if they've got phobias of needles and they have to have a black one for the needle going in.
Yeah.
So what it allows the child to do is to be empowered, because during the treatment, the family and the children are powerless over the control of their treatment, but it empowers a child to own, record, and then later in life tell the story of their childhood cancer.
How important do you think it is for their well-being? What's the impact on a child being able to use those beads of courage as support throughout their treatment?
It's classified as a positive reinforcement tool. So what it does is it allows the child to avert any anxiety about the procedures. And, you know, some children are phobias of hospitals, some of needles, some of isolation and closure. So I won't say distract, but it averts that anxiety and lets the child focus on the bead, which then in turn gives them power, makes them feel more comfortable. So what we're doing is we're supporting the mental health and well-being of that child going through what is classed as childhood trauma, which obviously, as we know, it's a lot easier to support a child going through trauma than it is to help heal an adult later in life.
That's a really good point, I think. And I also what I do love about it as well is that once you start to get those collection of beads, it must have an amazing impact on their mental health to think, well, look how much I've been through. Look what I've done and got through.
Absolutely.
Do you think that is the thing as well?
It does. It also gives them the words to tell the story of their childhood cancer. Before we had the beads in the UK, if a child had cancer and they disappeared from school for 6 months or a year, and they went back to school and someone would say, oh, where have you been? They say, oh, I had cancer. And that would be the end of the conversation. Whereas now we get so many stories. And we had one a couple days ago of children who go to show and tell assembly. And they say, the teachers say, oh, this is Josh here. He's come back, he's had cancer. And he said, and these are my beads of courage. And so that allows that informed awareness and education to other children about what this child has gone through. But at the same time, it enables the child who's had the cancer to tell the story, to feel empowered.
And to own it and to feel strengthened by it rather than weakened.
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. So it's an achievement. This is how courageous I've been, because I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. Whereas before, people used to look upon cancer or children going away as if they'd broken a leg, or they've had measles or chicken pox, and now they're all better, you know.
Or I think sometimes as well, so horrific to think about that you just want to shut down the conversation rather than express it and share those feelings.
Absolutely. And obviously communication is key in this life. One thing we need to do is be able to communicate better. And again, for children, if you shut down communication at an early age, you end up with lots of social problems later on in life. Let's keep them informed, let's keep them vocal, let's keep them empowered.
Indeed. Now tell me, how old is Ted now and how's he doing?
So he is 17. He is 17 now, and he will be 18 in August.
Okay. How's he doing?
He's doing fantastically.
He's a man.
He's a man. He's a young man.
Yeah.
And he's loving his sports. He loves his badminton, and he's starting to go running because he wants to do the marathon for children with cancer.
Oh my gosh.
But he can't do this year because he's only 17.
What does it mean to an organisation like Beads of Courage to have the support of a charity like Children with Cancer?
It's amazing. Our cooperation partnership has allowed people like me to take a step back from the arduous work of fundraising and focus more on the program, the delivery of the program, and as you're obviously aware, expansion of the program, which is something which I'm hoping you're going to ask me about next.
John, tell me about any expansion plans for Beads of Courage.
I'm glad you asked that question. With the support and help from Children with Cancer, we are in a position now where we started a pilot scheme for a sibling program.
This is music to my ears. I feel very strongly about what I've seen in terms of they're like the silent sufferers, aren't they?
It's called the Forgotten Child Syndrome. There were many white papers and case studies done by the BNG, British National Journal, I believe it's a British Medical Journal, I apologise. And many universities studied the brothers and sisters of a child who's had cancer. And what they found was that through no fault of the parents, the aunts, the uncles and the grandparents, the children or the brothers and sisters of a child with cancer were kind of pushed aside. Not neglected, but they didn't get as much attention. All the core focus, which rightly so, is on the healing of the child with cancer.
And it's heartbreaking because I've seen for myself now many times that the siblings just accept that they need to withdraw because this other child is sick and needs the treatment.
One thing I learned early on through Ted's diagnosis was that, and meeting other families of children who'd had cancer and meeting the brothers and sisters as well, and the parents, was that child with cancer doesn't just affect the child with cancer, it shatters the whole family unit. The core of the family is disrupted, so that it's like a nuclear explosion going off in the nuclear family. That's why the divorce rates within families who've got a child with cancer is 6 times higher than national average. That's why the brothers and sisters are more likely to be disruptive in school because they're looking for the attention that they're not getting at home. They're more likely to end up with custodial or like abuse, like a misuse of drugs and alcohol. So it has this ripple effect, and that's obviously with the support from Children with Cancer, we're now going to hopefully stem that. What we're going to do is, by supporting the brothers and sisters of children who've been diagnosed with cancer, we're hoping that will take away some of the guilt from the parents. They might be feeling guilt that they're not spending as much time with the brothers and sisters. It brings the brothers and sisters into the coping mechanism.
Well, it just helps them feel seen.
And it will also help them be part of the healing for their brothers. And that's very important because you're empowering them as well. So because of that, we're hoping that we're going to re-gel this core unit back together and have a healthier, happier society, which is what we need.
It's great to hear. You must have seen so many incredible stories in your time running this charity. Is there any particular story where the impact of the beads has really stayed with you?
I'd say there's a few. However, there are a couple that I can bring to mind straight away. One of them was a young teenager. She was diagnosed with cancer. She was very insular. I think she was probably on the autistic spectrum. She had a phobia of hospitals. She didn't want anything to do with the treatment process at all, and very vocal about it. So one of the nurses brought out the tray of beads of courage and said to her, look, these are the beads of courage. Have you heard of these? As she kind of looked and sort of like just glanced and saw these beautiful, bright coloured beads. So the nurse just sat down with her and explained, look, today, because you need chemotherapy, because you need an injection to get the chemotherapy in there, and because we're going to take some bloods off you, and because we're going to do this, and because we're going to do that, you would get those beads. But first of all, you would start off with this bead, and we'd get your name first, and then every day you come for treatment. And that was it. Within a couple of minutes, she was selecting the beads for herself, and that kind of opened up that communication between the nurse and the patient, which was incredible. And there was one young girl in one of the hospitals, and she had all her beads on her bed, and we went around to the hospital to do some refresher training, and she had all the beads out, and she loved the beads, and she said, here's my beads. And all of a sudden the end come loose, and they just went ching, 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 ching all across the floor.
And there must have been hundreds of them.
There were hundreds. Yeah. And they went across, they scattered, you can imagine it, like marbles. They just went rolling across the floor. And in a panic, everyone started picking up the beads, putting them back. And she said, it's okay. She said, but we need to make sure you got them all. So she got her phone out, and she'd taken a picture. Every day she got her treatment, she took a picture of the beads she got that day.
Wow.
So she knew exactly what order they should go back on. And then she said, I've got 2 black and 1 white missing. And so at the time we said, it's okay, we can give you 2 more. She said, I didn't earn those. They're not my beads. So we were on our hands and knees looking under the beds, and we found them.
Oh,
and it was like,
God.
And that's the importance of the fact that the beads, each child earns each individual bead. It's a representation of their milestone and their courage that they faced. So to them, every bead has a story. And
the moral of the story is tie that really tight.
Absolutely, yeah. We actually teach them how to tie it now, so that it shouldn't come undone.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. It's wonderful. I've just seen so many wonderful stories from what you do. So we want to thank you. And it's just been great to get to know you and to support what you do.
And we appreciate the collaborative working that we have together. I think we make a good match.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. We'd love to continue to find and support more organisations who support young people with cancer in inspiring and impactful ways. So please do head over to our website, where you can see all the ways you can help us to help them.